All right, everyone. Welcome to the CounselMore Mentorship Roundtable discussion. We have a very exciting speaker and guest today. Before we introduce him, my name is Mark Gray. I am the host of this meeting. For those of you joining the first time, this is a CounselMore sponsored event. CounselMore is one of the leading software developing firms that make software for independent educational consultants. And they have been kind enough to sponsor this meeting. Today, we have the infamous Isaac Jackson. We call him endearingly Zeke. Zeke is the founder of Fast Track College Advising and has been a dual enrollment advocate since the age of 16. Now, listen to this. He earned 57 college credits before high school graduation, which is 50 or so more than what I did before I graduated high school. Uh, a 2023 University of Minnesota alumnus with degrees in entrepreneurial management and political science, Zeke served as the student body vice president and received the Carlson School's prestigious Tomato Can Loving Award. As the longtime executive director of the nonprofit People for PSEO, Zeke advised hundreds of families and successfully lobbied for 6 changes to Minnesota state law, especially those revolving around dual enrollment. Now, an M&A associate at Revenue Rocket Consulting Group, he continues to advise on dual enrollment policy and enjoys running and spending time with his 2 cats. Zeke, we are happy to have you. A couple of ground rules before we get started. Zeke does, as I understand, have a Q&A at either various parts or towards the end of his presentation. In the interim, I'm going to mute everyone. Zeke, that's going to be including you, so you'll need to unmute yourself whenever you get started. But following that, I am going to shut up and let Zeke regale us with his knowledge. Zeke, thank you so much for coming, and I will turn the time over to you.
All right. Thank you for everyone for joining today. I'm really excited. I know there's a wealth of knowledge here in the room, and so I'm excited to share some things that I know and hoping to learn from all of you as well. Thank you, Mark and CounselMore for making this event happen. With 50-ish people here, I had the sneaking suspicion that we probably don't want to go, around the room and share information. But the more I know about all of you, the better I can tailor this information and provide you with relevant knowledge. So I would love to see in the chat if you'd humor me. Obviously I see your name, but if I could see, where are you calling in from? And at least one thing that you're hoping to learn about dual enrollment, that would be amazing to see. So I'm going to give y'all, 30 seconds to do that. As you get to know me, you might learn that multitasking is something that I can do, but it's not my strong suit. So I will be I'll be going back and forth between the chat and speaking here. Awesome. See some folks on the West Coast. Awesome. We want to talk about what students should not do in dual enrollment. Yep, good. Some questions about transfer versus dual enrollment versus AP. Good. More about transferring credits. Christine, hopefully I have you walk away with more than one thing. We'll do our best here. Awesome. Well, thanks for that, y'all, and I'll keep reviewing the chats as they come in here. But as Mark said, I want to start off by talking more about what is dual enrollment more broadly. It's something that looks a lot different in different states across the nation. So I want to kind of break down what that looks like. Let's talk about some myths around dual enrollment, how you can put dual enrollment into implementation in your practice. And then we'll do Q&A at the end where people are speaking up. Although please, if you have any questions along the way, please just throw them into the chat, and we can answer those as we come up. And Mark, one question I have for you, if you would be willing to help just kind of monitor that, and if there's like any relevant questions for the slides on, and I'm moving on to a new topic, if you just want to interrupt me and just tell me, then we can kind of answer things as we go along, if that
I
would be all
got
right
you.
with you. Yeah, that'd be super helpful. Um, I also want to say that, well, I have an IEC's guide to dual enrollment that will be sent out as a follow-up to this presentation here. And this guide contains all of the information I'll be talking about, as well as a couple of other things as well. So that's something that you'll be getting as a takeaway. I want to start off before we dive into kind of the meat here, just talking a bit more about myself. So, I grew up in rural Minnesota. We didn't have any like advanced placement classes. We had a few concurrent enrollment courses, college courses in the high school, taught by high school teachers, but only about 15 credits or so. And here in Minnesota, we have a dual enrollment program called PSEO, where the student can actually go to the college campus, whether it's in person or online as well, to earn free college credits. And so I did PSEO. That's why I got 57 credits before I graduated. And I really got into the space of dual enrollment. And by the way, dual enrollment is my entire focus. I'm not an IEC that really focuses on like the traditional college applications and scholarship applications and stuff like that. My focus is very, very narrow on helping students get into dual enrollment programs and then helping them adjust to those college level classes and supporting them and making sure they have a successful experience as a dual enrollment student. I don't really handle anything after that. Um, my job at People for PSEO, nonprofit I started in high school, along with a group of other people, we really came together and created that advocacy nonprofit because when I was a PSEO student, I was full time, and my high school told me that I couldn't go to prom. And as y'all get to know me a bit better, you'll come to know that I am a huge policy nerd. And when my high school told me I couldn't go to prom, I pretty quickly found out that they don't really have the power to do that under state law. I also learned that there is a tension, and this is something in Minnesota, it's something in other states as well, where the reason dual enrollment in my college classes was free was the money was following me from the high school to the college. And so, especially for small rural schools like my own, they really feel that pain whenever a student is leaving the high school and taking these college courses. And so, that pain presents itself as, in a variety of different ways. But one of those ways is sometimes punishing students for participating in dual enrollment, sometimes not providing all of the information in a timely and relevant manner for students to make use of their opportunities. And, even when even when a school is really knowledgeable and really open to students participating in dual enrollment, oftentimes the counselor, they might know about the colleges around them, but they don't really have a statewide perspective on which dual enrollment programs are best for students, depending on their career paths, depending on what colleges they want to go after high school. And so there is a really like interesting dynamic space here where third party people such as ourselves can kind of provide that additional context and information so that students are making use of dual enrollment and following a path that is actually best for them. Because high schools and colleges don't always have that same alignment when it comes to dual enrollment specifically. So my job at People for PSEO was really just going around the state, giving presentations to students and families around how to use dual enrollment and access it in Minnesota, as well as working with lawmakers to improve access to the program and address some of the issues that was present in the student experience. And so, as Mark mentioned at the kind of started the presentation, I've since moved on from People for PSEO. I'm doing mergers and acquisitions consulting now for my day job. Moved on because I'd run People for PSEO for 7 years. I was ready, I didn't want that to be my entire career. And my focus there was pretty singularly focused on the Minnesota dual enrollment ecosystem. And fun fact, Minnesota was the first dual enrollment program, passed the first dual enrollment law in the entire nation. And so now dual enrollment's kind of in almost all states across the nation. And a lot of those policies are derivatives of kind of the story of what happened here in Minnesota. And so one of the things I'm really excited about is the opportunity to begin working with students and families and counselors outside of Minnesota as well. Well, that's a little bit about me. Let's kind of get started here with some of the information you came here to learn about. I first want to start about, what is dual enrollment because this is a very fractured policy space. Every state has different rules and requirements, and that can be at the state level. Sometimes it's at the district level. Sometimes it's just a contractual agreement between one high school and one college. And so there's a lot of different phrases and used out there. My definition of dual enrollment that we're using in this presentation is that it is a free or low college credit program where a student is enrolling in an actual college course taught by an actual college professor or a high school teacher who's credentialed to teach college level courses. And by completing that class, that's a grade in a class that's going on their college transcript, and they're earning real college credits for that. Different states handle it differently, but typically those college credits will then be applicable to their high school graduation requirements. It has grown dramatically over the past 4 decades. Dual enrollment is not something new. It was passed in the 1980s here in Minnesota first, and then spread across the nation from there. And dual enrollment as kind of a category was created for a few different reasons, but one of the main stories was that, we if a student is a really advanced athlete, for example, we could have 16-year-olds going and representing the United States at the Olympics if they were ready for it. So, by that same logic, if a student is in high school and younger, but is ready for college courses, then why are we kind of arbitrarily holding them back? Why don't we create a pathway for them to start earning college credits as a high school student? And so that was one of the core reasons that it was created as a category. Now, here at the bottom, there's some, I guess, things you probably already know about. Advanced placement and international baccalaureate. These are relevant programs. They're complementary to dual enrollment, but they are not dual enrollment because these are exam-based credits that you could earn college credits depending on the college, depending on the score that you get, right? So I'll be talking a little bit about AP and IB and CLEP even, but because you earn the credit through a single test, that's not quite dual enrollment in the way that I'm talking about it. Concurrent enrollment is another thing that you may have heard of. This is typically used when a high school teacher is credentialed to teach college level courses inside of the high school. And there is a lot of effort and momentum around kind of standardizing approaches and making sure these classes are rigorous. There's a national level organization called NACEP, the National Alliance for Concurrent Enrollment Partnerships. So if that's something that you hadn't heard about or learned about, I do recommend you learn about NACEP and understand what they're doing. And then we have dual enrollment programs, and dual enrollment programs are going to vary wildly state by state. And that's one of the problems, or I guess difficulties around dual enrollment is that every state has a different policy environment. And you'll see similarities as you start to learn about what that overall landscape looks like. But it really requires having a good understanding at the state level to understand what dual enrollment is. All right, I'm gonna check in on the chat here. Um,
Yeah, nothing
yeah,
crazy. A lot of
great.
people are interested in just basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, everyone, just when would it be a good, when would it be advisable to, recommend this to students or what situations where it wouldn't be. Michelle has an
Yeah,
interesting one, but maybe you'll get
yeah.
there.
The 180 credit cap. So the state financial aid, I can't really speak to that, of course, because it's going to depend on each state oftentimes. Um, that's not something that I have, the 150% rule and maximum time frame. That's not something I hear a whole lot about, except for states where you can start dual enrollment really early. So, for example, in Ohio, you can start dual enrollment as soon as seventh grade. And that's not to say everyone is doing that, but on the sort of upper end of the number of credits that I hear about from students earning is typically no more than 60 college credits before they graduate from high school. Um, I have heard as high as like 70 or 80, but the 180 credit cap, it's not typically a concern. Oftentimes that would be where that would come up if a student is earning like a dual degree. So that's approach that I kind of took because I did entrepreneurial management and political science. Even though I got 2 years of college done before I graduated, or very close to 2 years of college done before I graduated, I used that extra time and I graduated within the regular 4 year time span, and I got 2 degrees out of that. And I think I was just under 180 credits for that. So it is something to have at the back of your mind. But typically, that's not something that's like happening on a widespread basis, to my knowledge. And Jason, with Oregon referring to concurrent as dual enrollment, yeah, so every state says different things. I say that concurrent enrollment is dual enrollment, but not all dual enrollment is concurrent enrollment, if that makes sense. Especially if they're going to the college campus and learning from a college professor, that typically no one's really referring to that as concurrent enrollment. All right, let's talk about some myths that I'm often hearing about from folks. Oh boy, I did this transition stuff all messed up. I thought it was going to be all grouped together, but dual enrollment is only for gifted students. That's something that I hear a lot about. Um, it is true that the student needs to be ready for the college courses, obviously. If they're not ready for the college courses, that is going to have a cascade of negative effects, right? A lot of the time, if you fail a college course as a dual enrollment student, not only is that negatively impacting the college GPA, but it's also negatively affecting the high school GPA. And if that college course was needed in order to graduate from high school, and that course was intended to satisfy a high school graduation requirement, I have also seen it happen where a student had to make up that course in the summer. And so, but at the same time, dual enrollment definitely is not just for students who are at, the top 10% of their class. I've even seen it where students who are in the 50 percentile or even lower actually do extremely well in a college setting because they weren't being challenged at the high school, and so they weren't engaged, or perhaps they just don't perform their best in a typical structured high school setting. And with how many people do we have here now? With 60 people in the room here, I'm willing to bet that at least a few of you did a lot better in college than you did in high school. So it's a story that can be told for students as well. Credits don't transfer well. That's an interesting one. It used to be more true. Like if we were having this conversation 10, 15, 20 years ago, that was definitely more true than it is today. There is momentum behind college systems across state lines, talking to each other and creating credit transfer pathways. Um, and a lot of that work has been happening post-COVID as well. So typically, what I'm seeing is that if you're doing dual enrollment and you transfer those credits in state wherever the student is, you have little to no problems. It's something you want to do the work up front to make sure that, as you're working with your students to talk about and set their target colleges, there is work that should be going in to verify what their policies are around dual enrollment. And unfortunately, there's not like, transferology.com can help with that a little bit, but there's not really like a standardized database out there for dual enrollment credit transfer. So the work has to be manually done to reach out to them and talk to them about what their policies are. And so don't skip that step. But typically, that's not going to be a problem if they're going to be staying in state, and especially if they're staying at the institution after high school where they were earning those dual enrollment credits. Things can get more complicated if they intend to bring those college credits outside of the state where they're participating in dual enrollment, especially if that out of state college is going to be a private college, for example. But that has been less and less of a concern in recent years, and I anticipate that it will credit transfer will continue to improve in the future. So my advice there is don't let that be a barrier to participating in dual enrollment. It's not something to that makes dual enrollment not worth it by any means at all. But you do have to do the work of checking how credits are going to transfer and plan ahead that way. Too complicated, not worth it. A lot of people out there don't do dual enrollment because it is overwhelming and there are acronyms everywhere and you have to figure out transfer credits and you have to make sure you're doing well in the classes so it doesn't affect your high school GPA. And a lot of people don't do dual enrollment because of how complicated it is. And so that's the superpower of our group here, where we're doing our best to provide clarity and ease the stress and help them understand what questions to ask, to whom, in what order, to determine what their dual enrollment options are, and how to make use of those options in a way that fits the students' and families' long-term goals. The last one I think is about AP. A lot of people and parents, everyone knows what AP is, right? So one of the questions that I hear often is like, is AP better or is dual enrollment better, for example? And my answer is always that it just depends. It depends on the student. It depends on their goals. Advanced placement is a very well-proven path. And the thing that I always make sure that they understand is that AP doesn't provide the college credits guaranteed. And you could put work in all year to get this AP score. And if you don't get that AP score, you're not getting any college credits for it. So it's kind of a trade-off where all colleges know what AP is. The score that you get gives them information that gives them confidence in the student's application in a very standardized way. But the college credits aren't guaranteed versus dual enrollment, where they are, as long as you do the work and you get the passing grade, you're getting the college credit for it. However, rigor for college courses at different colleges, it differs by college, right? And a target college might view dual enrollment from a local community college differently than it views credits earned from the state's flagship university, for example. And so that's, there's no right or wrong answer to that. It's just it depends on the specific student and the path that they're following when it comes to determining how much AP to do versus how much dual enrollment to do, or whether to choose one or the other. Let me check the chat here. Are private schools eligible to take free or low-cost dual enrollment through their local public school? Depends on the state, unfortunately. Yeah, that's something you're going to probably hear me say multiple times during the presentation. Here in Minnesota, for example, private school students don't actually have to enroll through a public school. You can do dual enrollment as a homeschool student. Or you can be enrolled in the private school and still take dual enrollment courses. And here in Minnesota, the private schools are actually required to prorate their tuition based on the number of college credits that you're earning through dual enrollment. And so they are actually, getting free college credits and having to pay less to the private school at the same time here in Minnesota. But it's going to depend on the specific state that we're talking about. Is there a formula to determine impact, if any, of a dual enrollment grade on GPA? That is going to depend primarily on the high school that they're attending. some high schools, it is going to be just a direct an A equals an A, a B equals a B, a C equals a C, transfer back to the high school. A lot of high schools have a weighted grading system where a college level course is worth could be, an A would be worth above a 4.0, right? In terms of the points that they're bringing back. So uh, there are formulas out there. It will depend on the specific student, and that would be a question that you ask you are either asking the high school counselor about, or you're making sure that your student is asking their high school counselor about. Like I said earlier, every state does dual enrollment differently. I'm not going to go through every one of these. I just have a few different examples here. Um, the main thing I wanted to cover on this slide is policy updates. Dual enrollment is a very dynamic policy conversation happening right now, and there's a lot happening in a lot of different states to expand dual enrollment, to tweak it, to create it where it doesn't exist. And so that is a whole job by itself to keep track of that. But um, the thing that you should know is that dual enrollment is bipartisan and it's for different reasons. And at the risk of overgeneralizing, I'll say that typically Democrats are supporting dual enrollment because it is free college or very low cost college. And the equity and economic advancement and all of those kind of components that you would expect, Democrats are generally very supportive of dual enrollment. Sometimes moderate Democrats are less favorable towards it, especially if the dual enrollment program is perceived as harming the public school system by taking dollars out of the equation. Um, but generally, Democrats are supportive for those reasons, and Republicans are pretty universally in support of dual enrollment. There's a lot of different motivations behind that. One of them is that private religious institutions and homeschool communities are generally very supportive of dual enrollment. Students from rural areas, they have an access to expanded course options through dual enrollment, and so they're typically rural constituents are generally supportive of dual enrollment that way. And a lot of Republicans I've talked to on this, they typically see dual enrollment as a sort of school choice, parent choice type of program, sort of falling under that category. The number one demand for dual enrollment, and the reason that it's grown so dramatically, especially over the past 10 years or so, is because of the cost of college, of course, as none of you are probably surprised by. So often when I'm working with families and helping them access dual enrollment, the number one reason is that they want to save time and money on their degree. Secondary sort of reasons that they are interested in dual enrollment would be to access a greater variety of courses than their high school offers, to simply challenge themselves and be functioning in sort of a perceived higher academic environment. Um, Also, sometimes students they just want to get out of their high school, and that could be a ton of different reasons. Whether they feel their classmates are immature or because of their sexual or gender orientation, they don't feel like they're fitting in, whatever the reason is. There's a very broad variety of reasons why families are interested in doing dual enrollment. Why does this matter for your practice? A lot of people, a lot of IECs aren't familiar with dual enrollment, and they might be, I'm sure all of you have at least some understanding of perhaps what the options are in perhaps your home state or where most of your students are located, but the problem of dual enrollment where the policy is so fractured means that it takes a lot of time to understand how dual enrollment works in different states. And so having that kind of top of mind as an area for you to learn more about, that's why you're here today. That's something that will continue to be relevant in the future as dual enrollment continues to grow. Uh, Most planning for dual enrollment is going to be starting in ninth, 10th, or 11th grade. I'm sure all of you have different sort of focus areas and prefer and differences in like when you prefer to start working with students, but dual enrollment planning and offering that as part of your practice is a way to bring in clients earlier to your practice. The other one, and we'll kind of talk about ROI on a later slide here, there's a very easy economic argument for participating in PSEO, dual enrollment PSEO. That's just, I talk about PSEO way too much, but dual enrollment more broadly, um, especially if the student is able to actually graduate from college earlier. This is a sort of framework, I suppose, for learning about dual enrollment and implementing it for students. And this is the approach that I generally do. The number one step is research. A lot of research kind of goes into it. You have to understand what dual enrollment programs are available to your students. You have to understand how those credits will transfer after they're done with dual enrollment and moving into college after high school. And you have to make sure you understand, any local requirements or policies or procedures that the student has to go through in their local district. And so having that research done is an important part. Enrollments, keeping track of deadlines is an important part here. Colleges typically have their own application processes and deadlines specifically for dual enrollments students to follow. And that step will also, the enrollment process will also depend on the state. In some states, you're having the student apply directly to the college on the college website. In other states, you're applying to it through the high school and completing paperwork with the high school. So knowing what that process looks like is important. Most students are starting small. A lot of students will just take one or two classes to get a sense of what that college environment is looking like, and what it takes to be successful in these college courses before they start doing full time. Some students are ready to just kind of dive into it full time. Not all of them are. And optimize. So when I'm working with students, I'm very, very, very focused on what careers do you want to be pursuing. After the student has, I ask for their top three careers, interests, at least across at least two different industries. And if they are dead set, they know exactly what career path they want to follow. It's a lot easier to kind of work backwards from there and help them understand what classes they should be taking through dual enrollment over the course of high school to get as far as possible in completing their degree before they leave. Um, if they don't know what those career interests are, then it's a matter of articulating. That's why I ask for three. Articulating, okay, well, our hypothesis is this is your number one interest. So we're going to have you start with classes that allow you to explore this. We'll pair it with opportunities that are on the college campus, whether it's joining a club or getting coffee with their professor or trying to do research and volunteering at the professor's research lab, get them actual exposure to that career field. Um, if they're in dual enrollment program, lets them take classes on the college campus, right? There's a whole ecosystem of internships and research opportunities and clubs and professional development activities that they wouldn't have access to if they weren't a dual enrollment student there. So helping them create a high school roadmap of their courses and a plan for either accelerating them all along their career path or helping them articulate what their actual career interests are is really important. What we really want to do is we want to avoid random acts of dual enrollment, and that's a quote unquote because it is a problem so big across so many states that there's a whole phrase for it. And random acts of dual enrollment are when a student is taking dual enrollment courses, but those courses aren't tied to a specific degree or a specific career path, that type of thing. And you don't want students just going out and taking dual enrollment courses for fun or selecting them without any reason in mind, because they'll be left out, left with these college credits that are kind of all over the place and don't actually help them progress towards finding a career or graduating college early. So that's, I think, all I wanted to say about those up there. The magic number is 30 college credits in terms of the return on investment for dual enrollment. Is that my next slide? No, it's not. I want to do this. I'll go backwards, but I want to talk about ROI next. The magic number is 30. So in order to calculate sort of the financial value of a student participating in dual enrollment, this is how you do it. First off, you work with the student and their family to articulate how many credits do you want to earn before you graduate from high school. And let's going down this example, let's say it's 30 credits. Tuition savings, you want to take the tuition costs of enrollment after high school. And then once you have that, you have all of the information that you need. Because if a student is able to graduate college a year early, let's say they earn 30 credits, they graduate a year early, and the tuition for a year at the college that they end up attending, whether it's a target college or the college that they're actually already doing dual enrollment at, let's say that's $20,000 for the year. And then let's say they go into a career where they're going to earn $70,000 in their salary for their first year. What you would do is you would say, okay, well, you are saving $20,000 because you're going to school for one less year and you're graduating early and you have one extra year of work that you otherwise wouldn't have been doing as part of your career. And so that's the $70,000. So you add those together and the financial value of that would be $90,000. And I have a more sort of in-depth approach to calculating this in the IEC guide for dual enrollment. So make sure you take a look at that once you receive it, if you want to kind of look at more examples there. I've been throwing information at y'all, I know. Let's see if there's any questions in the chat. Dual enrollment only transfers credits completely if you choose to go to that college. It does not transfer out of state. So dual enrollment, it does transfer out of state. The work that you have to do is you have to reach out to that college, the target college, typically their admissions office, and you have to just ask them, how does dual enrollment transfer here? And that's why under the enroll part here, I have a note about saving all syllabi, transcripts, and reports, because they're going to want to establish, if there's any questions, they're going to want to establish course equivalency, right? So it's important that either you or your student is saving that information. And yet, dual enrollment only transfers credits completely if you choose to go to that college. That is generally not true. You'll be able to transfer credits to other institutions. Michelle's asking, how do you determine what credits will transfer more generally? In Washington, universities are clear about which classes will transfer, but major specific classes are less clear. Let's see. It's determined once the student is enrolled and working with the registrar and advisor. Yeah, and it's going to depend on the college to some degree. Every college will have a slightly different process. You don't really want to put the student in the situation of not knowing whether the credits are transferred until the student is enrolled, right? So my advice there is do as much upfront work as possible, save those syllabi for the major specific courses so that they can establish the course equivalency upfront or as soon as possible. And that's also part of why it's important to have personal relationships with the admissions office and stuff like that as well. And people who regularly work with dual enrollment students. A lot of colleges, because dual enrollment is growing so rapidly, dual enrollment is an explicit sort of enrollment strategy for a lot of colleges currently, and that's a trend that's increasing as we look out into the future. So What I'm seeing is some departments are being created exclusively around dual enrollment advising, and those people are the, really awesome to have relationships with, because they can help ease that concern and advise on that type of thing as well. How do you see students that only take courses on the BSIC curriculum? Monica, I'm sorry, I'm not understanding your question. Can you jump in
Yeah,
here?
I just retype that are on the basic curriculum.
Oh, sure, like, gen ed requirements and stuff like that. Um, yeah, I think it depends on the student. Um, there is a temptation to use dual enrollment and just crank out all your gen ed requirements before you graduate because those will be the most transferable. Um, that is not always the best approach, though, especially for students who are going
Hi,
into STEM.
Diane. How are you? Uh,
Um, especially for students who are going into STEM degrees, right? You don't want to take all the gen ed courses and then they have
when
2 years worth
enrolled
of
while you're in
pure
high school,
engineering
college.
or pure
Oh, yeah,
chemistry
yeah,
degree.
yeah. No matter how
I'm gonna mute
Let me put,
everyone again, and then Zeke, you can.
longer than that, and I'm good.
thank you. Awesome. Especially for the STEM degrees, you don't want them taking 2 years of only engineering or upper level chemistry courses, right? So there's a temptation there, but typically you don't want to be taking only gen ed courses. You want to save some of those easier courses for as they get further down their college career. How do you evaluate the maturity level of a student? My thing is jumping around here. How do you evaluate the maturity level? Will they be ready to handle life in the workforce if they are younger? It depends. Yeah, it depends on the students. I do use a sort of dual enrollment readiness assessment on my end, that assesses whether the student understands how a college environment is going to be different than a high school environment. One of the things that one of the indicators that I really look for is how proactive the student is. A student can be on the immature side, but if you feel confident that they have the ability to navigate new situations and especially to ask for help, whether that's for help from you or the professor or their parents, um, that they're going to be doing that, I think is really the most important quality that I'm looking for. If they're not able to do that, that might be an indication that it's better to do concurrent enrollment or advanced placement. Like some students need that extra structure that comes with staying within the high school environment. So there's a judgment call that needs to be there. Rachel asks, can't dual enrollment change a student status from first year applicant to transfer applicants? Generally, no. Generally, no. Some colleges will, most colleges won't, from what I've seen. And that's because the student hasn't actually graduated from high school yet. Most colleges will consider them a non-degree seeking student. And for that reason, almost everything I'm saying in this presentation is in generalities because dual enrollment is so large and so different everywhere, but generally they don't consider dual enrollment students to be transfer students. Just like they don't if someone earns 30 college credits from college courses inside the high school from current enrollment, they're not going to consider them a transfer student, right? It's kind of the same thing, even though they're taking classes on the college campus. It doesn't they don't generally differentiate that between that. Assist.org. I'm not familiar with that. Is that like a transferology type of deal? Cool. Yeah, looks like it's. Um, is there a difference between online or in-person dual enrollment? Not typically from like a program management type of perspective. there might be quality differences. Some students might not do as well online as in person, of course, but not in like a policy sense. Although, again, caveat, every state is different. All right. Mark, how are we doing on time here? I want to make sure we have enough time for
Yeah, definitely. We typically the meeting is scheduled to end at 12:50 Central Time, but
wonderful.
I don't I don't know when we've ever ended that early. So yeah, if you want to go into Q&A, that'd be just fine.
Okay, so let's see. What do I want to prioritize here?
Oh, you're
I
fine.
want to
Your time.
I want to do a couple things first here. Red flags. If a student isn't ready for college courses and they get an F, that's going to affect both of their transcripts. So they need to be ready for dual enrollment. Credit transfer, we've been talking a lot about. FERPA is a thing, of course. So typically, colleges are unable to release those grades for the dual enrollment courses without the student consent. So make sure you're having regular communication with the student about how they're doing with their grades, or get that consent so that the grades can be released to their parents and to you. Um, Poor course scheduling, no random acts of dual enrollment. We've covered that. Lack of student vision, it ties into the random acts of dual enrollment. Everyone has different approaches, of course. My approach is always that the student has their top three career interests in mind. And if they aren't feeling certain, I frame it as, all right, these are our hypotheses. Now we're collecting information to either prove or disprove these hypotheses about where you want to go for your career. And part of the job of going through dual enrollment now is to gather that data. And then the readiness gaps. I think that the it requires a different approach to get a high school student into college courses while they're in high school and to support them with that process than it does to help a student apply for college after high school, right? Where depending on your practice, maybe that's where your relationship kind of ends with them. The I have a lot of information about this type of thing in the guide as well, so I'm not going to dive too deep into that. So, I do have some case studies in here as well. And let's do this to kick off the Q&A. I have a question for y'all. How many of you have students that this information could apply to right now? I'd love to see your responses in the chat. And for that, then let's go into Q&A. And I know we're kind of at the end actually, so if people need to head out, I'm going to say this and then actually let's do Q&A. Like I kind of shared at the start of this, Fast Track is a brand new venture for me. So I'm looking for partners who are interested in launching a dual enrollment service within your practice. I'm looking for 3 partners. Our goal to work together would be to increase your client lifetime value. I'd be working 100% white labeled. So I would work with you to gather the information I need to do the job of articulating what their dual enrollment journey could or should look like. I won't interact with them directly unless you want me to be doing that. And I know a lot about dual enrollment across a lot of different states. So I believe I can save you all a lot of time if you want to be doing more dual enrollment in your practice. QR code there, if you want to scan that and fill that out, please do so. So I guess with that was really my last thing. What questions do y'all have? What do you want to talk more about? We can kind of go around on the slides if you guys want, but I think I covered all the information that I wanted to make sure we covered before people left. So what do you guys want to talk about?
If you have burning questions, go ahead and shoot them in the chat. And then we can. Sorry, I've got 2 Shih Tzus that think they're Rottweilers. I don't know if you guys heard that. But yeah, Or if you're feeling chatty, you can just unmute and ask.
Yes, either way is good. Um, let's see. 50% do dual enrollment. The question is AP versus dual enrollment. Yep. Um, Marie, I'm so sorry. We can go over the slides for folks who want to stick around. Samantha asks, are dual enrollment classes listed that way on a transcript? Does a student have to tell the college that it was a dual enrollment class? Uh, from what I have seen, typically, no. Typically, they're not being listed. There's usually not like a note or anything on the transcript. Colleges can generally tell just by the fact that, hey, you're in high school and college at the same time. They typically are able to just kind of know that way. But they are fully college courses in every sense. The student is sitting around other older college students. They're learning directly from the professor, that type of thing. Like there's no difference for that. Um, Wake Forest didn't accept any dual enrollment. North Carolina. No dual enrollment at all is pretty uncommon. Some of the Ivies don't accept any at all. Some I don't know Wake Forest specifically if they're a private school, that might be the explanation. Most public institutions will accept some dual enrollment. Yeah, private. So that'll be the reason there. Um, Whether they're making the argument that there is no course equivalency, we have a special program, we want all of our students to go through it, or whether it's a financial motive for the private institution. Those are kind of the two reasons I'm seeing for why they don't accept the dual enrollment credits. Please show breakdown slide number 3. Oh, sorry, was that the number 3, like slide number 3? Is that what you wanted? This one, I believe you're talking about. Great.
So, Zeke, I've got a question.
Yeah.
Uh, it seems like if there's a chance that a student is going to apply, even if they have like some safety schools, and they're not necessarily trying to get into a state school, but if there's a good chance they could end up going to a state school, it seems like some DE would be a safe bet. What about the like the tech startup dynasties, right? That we occasionally work with who, it's Ivy or bust. Would that be a scenario where maybe some DE is probably not going to be the best fit for whether what their goals are advisable or not, right? Aside.
Right.
Would that be a scenario where maybe DE is not what that client is per se looking for?
You know, that's a tough question to answer. Partly
I think
because
you can. Go on.
with the disclaimer that my expertise isn't really getting into students into any particular school after college, right? I'm very focused on the dual enrollment and making sure credits will transfer if they are accepted. I will say that I have seen students participate in dual enrollment both at community colleges as well as like larger state universities and subsequently get accepted into Ivy League schools. Um, it really depends, I think, from my understanding, on how the student is positioning their story. I think one of the common threads I see with that as well is that whether it's at a community college or a university, like I kind of said earlier, there are tons of extracurricular opportunities that are unlocked when you're a dual enrollment student in a college setting. Typically, professors are very impressed by a student and are willing to go a little bit out of their way for them um, to get them involved in their lab. If they're attending, so for example, one student I worked with, and these case studies are in the guide as well. Um, student Y here, he took both AP classes and he took dual enrollment credits at his essentially just the university closest to his home. I worked with him to identify a set of research and internship opportunities that were available exclusively through the college campus. And he got into an Ivy. Less than 50% of his credits from dual enrollment followed him to the Ivy. But conversations with him and his family, they really felt that sort of the extra opportunities that he had on the college campus to dive really deep into his career interests. This was a student, he knew exactly what he wanted to be doing and why he wanted to be doing it. And so I was able to kind of help him dive deeper into that subject by getting more involved on the college campus. And so he then went on to accomplish some impressive things. And the fact that he got into an Ivy really outweighed the fact that he wasn't able to bring all of his credits there. His family felt that the dual enrollment that he did and on the work that he did on the college campus was a strong factor into him getting into the school that he wanted. I hope that answers
Yeah,
your question.
what school and what program was that in? I'm kidding. You don't have to break your your client confidentiality stuff, but it really, I mean, like it sounds like you're not lawyering around the question. It really does depend on one, the student and the institution. So I imagine that particular Ivy would have diametrically opposing policies on dual enrollment for another, or another Ivy would have like totally different policies of acceptance on that. Okay.
Yes, yes. There's I think one Ivy, and I wish I could recall which one it is. I think there's at least one Ivy that accepts all dual enrollment credits earned before graduating from high school. There's a couple that have caps, like a 30 credit cap, for example, and then there's a few that just they don't accept any of them. And so that's kind of the trade-off. One of the trade-offs that needs to be considered when you're making the
Totally.
decision whether or not to do dual enrollment where are you trying to go afterwards, and so yeah. Monica, the presentation contents, I have all of the contents into an IEC's guide to dual enrollment, and so that'll be one of kind of the takeaway materials that'll be shared with all the event participants here.
Yeah, if you registered for today's event, you'll eventually get a follow-up email with this PDF in it. I have looked at it. It's a perk of hosting this meeting. It's very good. So thank you for doing that, Zeke.
Yes. Christine, thank you for sharing that information. That's not something that was on my radar, so that's great to know. Yeah, there are efforts to this is I think a good example of what I was saying earlier of like there are efforts being made to make sure that there are communication systems set up for talking about transferring dual enrollment credits and qualifying and vetting them and establishing equivalency. Um, so that's great to know.
And last thing, I'm genuinely trying to get guidance counselors, especially from like private schools, to like me. Guidance counselors, some of them think that we're like the prostitutes of, higher education, and Monica's nodding. Yeah. Um, what a good conversation starter. Hey, can you tell me about your high school's dual enrollment program? Like, I'd love to know more, like maybe get my students to go there or whatever, if you guys have a good, I think that could be a really good conversation piece. This has been great, man. Thank you so much for doing this. I'm looking forward to digging in to my guide that you made for us. And again, if let's say I don't want to, let's say I don't want to dig into your guide and I would just rather you just do it for me, how do we get in touch with you?
Yeah, my favorite way to communicate is by text and phone calls. So I'm gonna throw my number into the chat here. if you want to talk, shoot me a text or fill out the QR code that I had up on the screen earlier. And my contact information is going to be in the guide that's being sent out as well.
Sick. Okay. Awesome. And Beth, we'll make sure you get your guide, okay?
And Samantha, when we do a search to help students find what they are looking for, is it better to look for dual enrollment or early college programs? I really apologize. I'm not trying to lawyer, but it depends on the student and it depends on the state. If you'd like to share that, I could maybe give some better guidance there. Um, and some states also call dual enrollment early college, so that's part of the reason why uh, I say that as well. It's just hard to answer that specifically. Um, Southern Utah University has a great program. That's awesome to hear.
Well, guys, I have a meeting I've got to get to relatively soon, or that I at least need to prepare for. Uh, Zeke, is there any more departing wisdom or approving nods you want to make at us before we
No,
turn you loose?
I really enjoyed talking with all of you. I think one thing I'd say that I haven't brought up is make sure to talk with the education department in your state. Particularly if you're working in heavily in one or two or three states, whether some states it's the Department of Education, like the K-12 education. Some states have a higher education agency that handles dual enrollment. Figure out at the state level where dual enrollment is living, and establish a relationship with whoever at that agency is responsible for general community outreach and information and stuff like that, because they are a great resource as well. But besides that, yeah, I would love to work with some of you, and I hope that some of you will consider working with me to open up dual enrollment as an opportunity for your students. And thank you all so much.
This was like a 5-star steakhouse meal, man. Thank you so much. Very helpful and practical. Uh, thank you everyone for attending. We've got a speaker next month lined up as well. If you want to sign up for the next one, these events are free. Come one, come all. You don't have to be a CounselMore member to attend. Just go to the CounselMore website, go to events, and find the mentorship meeting, and you can sign up. Everyone, have a lovely day, and Zeke, you've been great. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Bye,
Sal.
everyone.